Good evening, welcome.
Good evening.
Has the Asantehene done a bit more than he usually does? Has he indicated a certain vested interest in the NPP ticket?
Well, I mean, today was a very, very unique day. It was very different in many respects. For the first time in the history of our politics, we have a sitting Asantehene, obviously of the Asante Kingdom, very big kingdom with a long history, lend his credibility and lend the force of the royalty behind a vice presidential candidate of a political party. And the extent to which, the depth and the personal extent to which he went to establish this. He started, I mean, it is one of the most brightest political speeches that you would ever come across. He starts methodically, in a very methodic way. First of all, he paints the picture of the roots of Napo. Talked about the fact that he raised him, he contributed to his upbringing, he even paid his school fees. I mean, revealed things that we never knew before. Goes ahead to establish the credibility of Napo himself and what he can accomplish. Then he goes ahead to also talk about his strengths. And all along, he's speaking tree. And then he comes down finally to the admonitions, the themes of humility, the themes of character that he then speaks to Napo. At the end of the day, what he has done is to present what we call a signaling mechanism to the vice presidential candidate, to the party, and to the larger audience, which is Ghanaians, that this is my son, he belongs here, and I am solidly behind him. He lends the credibility of the entire Ashanti Kingdom.
The golden stool.
The golden stool. The soul of the Ashanti state. And the stronghold of the NPP. A region that is able to enthusiastically and energetically support the party, lends that credibility to Napo in the most personal of ways in our political history. I don't remember a time that this has happened before. So this is the context within which this is happening. What does it do? He also, apart from signaling or lending his credibility and bringing that entire, image of the Asante stool behind him, he also operates what we call a positive implicative accountability measure. What is that accountability? Mm-hmm. He says at the end of that speech, towards the end, that, well, in case he goes in an awry way or does something that is not totally acceptable, Dr. Bawumia always has the opportunity to get back to him. And so he exercises that accountability or supervisory role over him. The third thing that this does is that it works in a way that for voters who are undecided, for people in the Ashanti region and beyond, who really were looking for a last reason to jump onto the board, it gives them a last buffer of reason why they really should support the ticket. At the end of the day, let's remember that apathy was one of the major reasons in 2008 and in elections where the numbers don't come through. And we do know that in this particular election, it's the first time they have a candidate of Muslim Northern heritage. I mean, there were still probably some pockets of hesitancy within that particular stronghold as to whether this is really emblematic of our state, emblematic of our nation, and emblematic of our tradition and culture and royalty. Having somebody who is a scion of the royalhood, and he uses, I was counting, not less than 5 or 6 times, he says, Wanana, and Nana, something like that, if I'm saying it right.
Because claiming ownership of the candidate.
Of the candidate. Wanana, and all of that. He uses it not less than 5 times in the speech. I was trying to make a count, trying to emphasize the closeness and how connected they are, in terms of owning the candidate. And it's a last bastion of support that he gives, a signal that, hey, for all those who were still waiting to get a certain signal to jump onto the ship, this is the answer. He probably executed one of the biggest political masterstrokes in contemporary politics.
Will that worry, should that worry other candidates? John Dramani Mahama has not yet presented himself and his running mate to the Asantehene for this particular election. Should they be concerned that going there to seek the Otumfuo's blessing will just be a procedural act, that they may not actually obtain his blessing for them to win. They may just get a procedural courtesy, cursory welcome because of courtesy and protocol. But in terms of securing the commitment of the Asantehene, they may not get it. Should they be worried like that?
I think the Asantehene stature within our body politic is not a cosmetic one. It runs very deep and wide, especially his impact when it comes to being a broker of peace in different measures, from the Dagbon crisis to several other political and social, ethnic, cultural crisis situations that we have in this country. I do think that he's earned a respect by a large swath of Ghanaians across different ethnic, political divides. He definitely occupies a very different role within our social, cultural, political history. And I do think that it would not just be a symbolic measure. He genuinely believes in the Ghana project. He genuinely believes in unity. He definitely believes in diversity. And he genuinely believes in people exhibiting their own will and their own talents, and people pursuing their own ambitions to the logical conclusion. I think that we should continue to respect and protect that particular position, because he seems to be a very honest broker in national affairs, and people of different political and ethnic persuasions, perceive him in that light, and I think that would not be taken away by this particular act.